Alrighty, we are live. What is up, everybody? This is Marshall Couture, also known as Planet Plex, and we have, of course, the Beat brother, the other Beat brother from another mother, Mr. Bryce, also known as
Yes.
Upright. What's up?
What up, man? How you doing? How you been?
I'm doing good, trying to learn things and work on projects and live life. How
I feel it. I feel it, man. I feel it.
about you? How's things going?
Good, man. Just yeah, man. Same. Living life, trying to be productive and stay creative, and that's what keeps me happy. So
Nice.
yeah. Yeah, man.
It's been a while since we've done a video here, but it's like coming home.
It is. It is. It always feels good, man, to have to chop it up with you, man. It always feels good. I love your insight on topics and stuff, so it's always cool, man. We always have a good chat. you know
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. Same here.
Yeah.
Um, so we do have a a topic today. Should producers learn an instrument? Which is something that is very interesting. I think you and I have chatted about that plenty of times in different ways and stuff behind the scenes. And yeah, there's just a lot to it.
Mm,
And this was, a topic that you came up with that you thought would be fun to discuss.
right.
I guess, I'm curious, what's your initial thoughts on it?
Man, my initial thoughts are so I would say if I go back like 10 years or so, I was pretty much like heavy into sampling. And I had like 4,000 vinyl records. And so it was really about chopping up samples, finding samples to chop up, doing drums and adding a bass line, that kind of thing, maybe putting some sort of additional top melody on it and stuff like that. So that was pretty much my whole workflow. um, and then like at some point, I think it was when I got push. I realized that push had like a musical like layout, and I had a guitar like before that. I had a guitar, but I wasn't really taking it very seriously, wasn't really diving into it at all. But then when the push came and it had that kind of layout that is really kind of similar to the guitar, something kind of clicked for me. I was started getting more into actually playing melodies and making songs based on that layout because it was similar to the guitar for me. Um, and that kind of evolved into getting into synthesizers. So I kind of got off track right there. I kind of moved into, man, I want to learn synthesizers. That led to modular and that whole rabbit hole. So I went down that rabbit hole for a while. And I think ultimately, what at some point I realized, man, I really there's some lack of knowledge that I think would help me that I really don't have. Yeah, I mean, I can play these notes with push and they're all in the key and stuff like that with the push layout. But even when it came to samples, like using samples and trying to use push with that, my ear had a hard time feeling confident in what I was doing. It was like sometimes I would play something and I would feel like, oh, okay, well that it sounds good, it might feel good, but then that lack of really knowing and having a little bit of confidence was kind of always eating at me. And so that led me to just kind of diving into the guitar and wanting to take that seriously so that I could so that the musicality would eventually unearth itself, so to speak.
Mhm.
And that's really my kind of journey. So that's where I'm at right now. Like I'm really um, giving the aspects of music more attention. Like quote unquote music theory, kind of getting into that whole realm, and really trying to learn. And I think through all of that, through the music theory and trying to learn to play an instrument, I've noticed that my ear's gotten better. Like, I can hear things way better than before, when I didn't have the understanding of how notes and scales and things like that actually work. So just
Mhm.
through repetition and learning these things, I've noticed that, man, my ear's gotten a lot better just from that. So that's really kind of where I'm at the moment.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I think it's interesting too. Something that we've talked about in the past on this show too, is kind of some of the difficulties that come with sampling, especially back in the days when there wasn't as many interesting tools to use. Nowadays, some of these problems are actually a little bit there's ways around them, that whereas before it wasn't as much with some of the different programs and tools you could use for things like sampling. But I remember you talking about how sampling was a bit maybe limiting, or there was some struggles with samples. And do you feel like that led you into more getting into possibly playing instruments and stuff?
Yeah, I think that could have been a little bit of it too, because at the time, and I know I've said this before, but at the time, like, and this is no shade on people that sample at all, because man, I love sampling. I love samples. I love chopping stuff up. I think that's a really, sometimes you can only get that feel from chopping up a sample. But one of the things for me was like, when I get in the studio, when I want to make some music, at that moment, I really kind of want to create. I don't want to listen for something to chop up. And I know everybody's different when it comes to this. Like, that's how some people get into the vibe. They get into the whole creation process, is actually taking the time to listen to samples and do that whole process. But for me, so I have a day job, obviously, and I would come home and, yeah, I want to get creative, sit down, pull out some records, and being able to get into immediately into the creative process wasn't there for me, because I'd have to listen. You go through a sample, oh man, that I don't like that, move over to another song, I'm not really feeling that, and on it goes until you finally found something. And then, for me, just, this is me, that creative energy may have, that, I mean, it could be a half hour before you actually find something that'll work for you, or you think something might work. You get that, in the MPC or in the DAW or whatever, and then you realize, oh man, I'm not really feeling this. And then there's the whole part of, okay, well, I can do something with it. That is a part of it. What can I do with this? Maybe I'm not feeling it in the way I thought I was. So now let me try to make this work in some sort of way. And that whole process right there, while I know some people love it, I know some people love that. I know, no shade on that. But for me, um, that process was getting in the way of me immediately being creative. So, I think somewhere in my mind, I knew, like, I needed to move towards being more immediately creative, and that is definitely how I feel about, um, you know actually playing something in. You get right to the ideas that are in your head. You get straight to it. You don't have to, reference something else. You don't have to go to find something. It's all what's within you, and you get it out right there. So that was a bit of it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And again, like there is like limitations, because I think we both come from that world of starting from oh, we want to make hip hop beats. For me,
Yeah.
I wanted to rap, and I didn't have any producers around me, so I had to figure out how to make the beats myself. And then I kind of got, over the years, I got more and more into making beats, and everything, even after as I made rap albums and stuff. um and I just kind of fell in love with making beats in that way. And I love samples, like,
Hmm.
still to this day I really love samples. But there's limitations with using those samples, when you don't know an instrument.
Mm.
So, like, you could have a loop going, and, well, first of all, that if you just keep the loop at the same speed and everything, you're preserving the same pitch. Well, I don't know how to play an instrument, so I don't know what key that's in. I didn't
Right.
even originally know what a key was,
Yeah. Yeah.
and, like, I don't know, like, maybe it needs some bass, or I want to chop it up and put something down, like a little synth line or something. And, through playing around with the keyboard, I was able to get to stuff, but a lot of times it was kind of either cheesy, or, like, I just felt like it didn't fit with the
Mm.
sample. I don't
Hmm.
know, where to go with the notes, really, like, outside of just trying by ear to figure some stuff out. Once in a while I'd come up with something, but kind of similar to what you were saying, like taking a long time to look for a loop. It would take me forever just to make a layer that I liked, you know.
Yeah.
Um and if I get to like 3 or 4 layers, then it's like, okay, now I have this loop. Now what do I do? Like, so
Right.
it is kind of an arduous process. Yeah, I do love it, and I still to this day love sampling with modular. Like, one of the biggest goals I had with modular was I wanted to learn how to mangle samples, like, even more, and, like, and see what else I could do with samples. And then learning about, like, things like Ableton, I realized I could it was more flexible with samples, and I could actually do some things that I used to not be able to do. So I guess one thing real quick is, like, when we're talking about producers, I think we're both coming from, like, a hip hop beat making
Mm.
background. So that's kind of what we mean. But there's also people who are, they just got their computer or their iPad or their iPhone, and they're making, techno music or any kind of, like, electronic based music, or stuff with maybe synthesizers and stuff, and they don't really know how to play an instrument yet. And I think that you don't have to ever learn how to to play an instrument, and you can be a musician. Um, However, I do feel like there's possibly benefits to learning an instrument, and I haven't quite. I'm working on learning the piano at the moment, but I've kind of just started my journey, sort of. And you know I feel like it will definitely benefit me, like you said, like, it'll help your ear and stuff. So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know, what do you think are, like, the pros and cons of, like, I guess, using learning an instrument when it comes to being a producer of whatever kind of music?
Mm. Okay, so one huge con is the time.
Yeah.
You know, the time you kind of have to humble yourself and say, oh man, I'm not going to be able to make what I necessarily want to make right now. I know I'm a Padawan. I'm just getting started. You know what I mean? Um, that is one of the cons for sure. It's like that immediacy of uh, just making a full like track um, is almost kind of taken away from you. You're starting from ground zero. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's the first con. But on the flip side of that, you can enjoy that whole process, that whole like even beginner aspect. For me, like the beginner phases is where you can really like enjoy every little aspect of the learning process. You know what I'm saying? Of
Yeah.
starting at ground zero. Everybody starts at ground zero, and that's a cool thing. You know, if you can enjoy the journey. So,
Yeah.
what about you? You see any cons necessarily?
Yeah, I mean, there's like I said, different pros and cons. One thing kind of related to what you're saying, is like you said, it's when you're sitting there learning, you're practicing, say you're practicing chords, you're practicing scales, things like that. You know, I have a very beginner level experience with that. I've attempted to learn the piano in the past. I've attempted to learn the guitar in the past. I know enough to play around and do some fun stuff, still at a very primitive level, but um but what I have noticed, and this is after years, I mean, I'm 45 years old. Like, I feel like I feel different about it now. Like when I was younger, I was very anxious and I
Mm,
just wanted to get to the let's make an album and become famous
absolutely.
rappers.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and like now, I'm like, I've already have albums behind me. I never became a famous rapper, and I'm kind of okay with that.
Right, right,
Um,
right, right,
and like now I still love music.
right.
I love music for the sake of music, and sitting down and practicing chords and scales, as boring as that was when I was younger trying to do that, now it's more meditative, it's almost
Mm,
therapeutic, it's
yeah,
enjoyable. I can
yeah.
sit there like you and I were talking about this exercise I was doing on the piano this morning, and I really enjoyed doing that exercise, and it was really fun like when I got to the A chord through this whole progression, because for some reason that A minor chord just it was like it felt so good.
Mm,
and
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
just sitting there playing it for 2 hours, like not the A chord but playing this exercise for like 2 hours just trying to get it right,
Man,
it was
man.
actually very enjoyable. It was frustrating a little bit but also enjoyable.
I can totally relate, totally relate. And I think that to me is one of the best parts of learning an instrument, just the journey and the enjoyment of being in the moment, you know. I think that's a really special part of learning an instrument. The frustrations, the achievements, you know, all of that I think is all part of it. But since we're talking pros and cons, you know, I mentioned one con. um, a pro of I think learning an instrument is the satisfaction that everything you do is done by you. You know, you didn't have to get someone else's initial idea and use it as your own. You know, the stuff you're playing is directly connected to you. So I think that's a pro for sure. You
Mhm.
know, just being more connected to what you're doing,
Yeah.
and you know, it feels more creative
Mhm.
in hindsight. Like if I look at sampling, man, you can make something super dope sampling and just be vibing with it and love it, you know, and there's that. But then I think of like the the difference between actually playing something and vibing to it. It's a little different. There's a little bit more of a connection to it. You know, it feels more gratifying.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and, like, when I think about, like, that process, and the thing is both can go hand in hand, like, you can do both,
Yeah.
and, if you do learn an instrument, that's just adding another thing to be able to work on your sound with. And I feel like when you're making a beat, for me, most of the time, like when I was sampling and making beats most of my life, I couldn't afford like an MPC like back in the days. Like when I was a kid, like an MPC was like $3,000 or something
Yeah.
crazy. And there, first of all, I didn't even know where I could get it, let alone how I would pay for that. Like I didn't have that kind of money like working as a bagger at the grocery store, like you know.
Right,
But
right, right.
so like I reverted to like, small little programs that I could afford. And so I've been making them beats in the DAW, but I was able to like use other people's equipment sometimes. So I did learn some equipment, but it's like there's a big difference between sitting down and programming in samples or chopping them up, putting samples or being in a DAW, and you have like a timeline, and you're like you just place these things in with like MIDI notes or however. And and there's a big difference between that and like sitting down and like you just grab your guitar and start playing, or you sit
Right,
down at the piano and you start
right.
playing. Like it's like you're outside of the DAW. Like I love DAWs
Yeah,
and everything, but it's
right,
like I don't need anything but my instrument to sit down
right.
and get going.
Man, that's a good point. That's a real good point. That is a real good point. And then you're immediately in the mind space, in the mindset of doing your thing,
Hmm.
right away. Yeah, that's it. That's interesting. And I want to just clarify something. Like, man, I think this whole idea of learning to play an instrument is kind of for people that are like they have this little nagging in the back of their mind. It might be way in the back of their mind, that, oh man, I'd love to be able to play. And like I said, that could be way at the back of their mind. I know it was way in the back of my mind. Like I knew something could be I don't know how to put it. Like I knew there was more that I could get from music if I had more musicality. And I think this topic and this conversation is kind of for those people that have that in the back of their mind. For
Yeah.
those that just love sampling and they're diehard and like they're not feeling this at all, man. I'm not. I'm definitely not trying to throw shade because I love sampling. I think, man, obviously there are a lot of just incredible producers that's all they do is sample.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely not throwing shade on the sampling process at all. I think this is just for people, that maybe there's this little bitty voice there saying, learn something.
And
Uh
to be fair, like these the sampler equipment and things you can do in a DAW with like a MIDI keyboard and stuff, like it's come a long way.
yeah.
Like you can be more expressive with samples now than you used to be. You can manage things like pitch a lot easier than you used to be. Like if I have a sample, just say a loop or some kind of sample going on in Ableton, I can grab the tuner, bring that down, and I can find out what tune it is, like what key things are in and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
you
Man, that's a
know,
good
and
point.
and there's also algorithms now where you can play the sample slower and faster, and it won't change the pitch, and they're pretty darn good. So like that was something, if you're a young person making beats on like Ableton or wherever, that was something that wasn't available to us when we were younger. So
Yeah, for
there's
sure.
a lot you can do. And again, I know that you've talked about things like scalar and stuff. Like
Right. Yep.
there's a lot you can do musically without
Absolutely.
having to know how to play a piano. You can learn. It's interesting because you can learn music theory and apply that without even knowing how to play an instrument, especially with some of these other tools that you can get, on your computer and or in your equipment or something.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, man. It is true. Like Scalar, like you mentioned, Scalar, man, you can do literally everything in Scalar. You can get your chord progression. You can build like a melody in there, and even do your bass in
Hmm.
Scalar. So you can potentially write a whole like track in Scalar with through the melody and all that, all the parts you need. And man, it would all sound musically in key or whatever, or correct
Hmm.
tonality, so yeah, scalar is very powerful for sure.
And
Yeah.
then, like, just the power of MIDI notes in general, like, you know, you get a sequence of MIDI that you like, and now, the world is your oyster. What instrument do you want it to be? It can be
Right.
anything, like,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, man. Totally true. Totally true. Definitely.
So, there
Yeah.
there's, like there's so many tools out there that are just really awesome, and I like to play with all of them. I love sampling still. I love, modular. You get into modular and CV, and we're talking about a whole 'nother new world, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So,
Absolutely. The quantizers in
mhm,
modular, just being able to quantize notes and get the pitch exactly how you want it through a scale in modular. I mean, there's a lot of resources and tools out there, man.
mhm.
It's
And
crazy.
honestly, to be the in some ways, with all those tools, is like that's a pro and a con, because it's like when I was younger, I had a very limited set of tools, and even that was pretty darn deep. But I didn't have enough knowledge. Like, I remember when I first started making beats and I learned what an equalizer was, what an
Mm,
EQ was, and I was
yeah,
like, I didn't even know that I could, like, carve my sounds with an EQ and stuff at one point,
man.
and when
Yeah.
I did, it was like level up time.
Yeah,
Um
I remember when I got introduced to EQ too, and it's similar. It's like, man, EQ. It's crazy, and I think to that point, like the journey is long. The journey is long. I mean, it may be faster for kids nowadays, but man, this has been a long journey for me. There's been lots of little things like that. Learning how to mix, learning EQ, filters, what is a synthesizer, what's an oscillator, like all of this stuff. It's been a long journey, and packing all that stuff into this journey, I think now I'm finally at the point, man, maybe I need to learn music, kind of thing. But wherever you're at on that journey, man, it's a long journey though. It really is. There's so much to it. And all these little things are part of it.
yeah. And to be honest, if you're starting out trying to be a producer, samples might be a great way to start because if you don't know all that stuff, you know,
Man, that's a good
grab a
point.
loop, throw
That's a
some
good point.
drums in, and now all you got to worry about is can you put some bass in there? Like,
Yeah, that's a real good point, man. That sampling is a great way to get started, right?
yeah.
Yeah, because
And you
yeah,
learn, and one thing that a lot of people I think don't realize when if they think about like, a hip hop producer, for instance, and they're like, "Oh, well, that's not music. They're just taking other people's music and sampling it." One thing that a lot of people don't realize is when you dig for samples like that all the time and you're listening to all this different various music, you're getting a music education just in that. Like you're learning about a lot of different artists from the past and the present, and you're like you're gaining actually a foundation, and I don't know, like if people think sampling isn't music, I mean that's the way of thinking. Like when we were younger, that was a
right,
criticism that there
right.
was. I don't know if so many people are criticizing that kind of music as much anymore, but they're out there still, and
Yeah, yeah,
it is what it is. But I don't know, it's interesting.
yeah.
But I don't think that coming from that background, may like now with what I know now and the music theory I have learned and stuff, like I don't think that made me a lesser musician or not a musician. It's just a
Right.
different type of situation,
Yep.
and it's a different approach to music.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and man, that's how I started. And no shade on samples. I want to be clear on that, man. I don't want anybody to think I'm hating because, but yeah, it's this is all. It's all a process. It's all a journey, man. And I think I'm speaking from where I'm at on my journey, and the things I've gone through, like you mentioned, EQ and And compression, learning to hear compression was like, whoa, man, like I can't hear anything. And then finally you start to like, wait a second, I can hear that's over compressed. You know, that's a little too much there. And then you start to realize, okay. So anyway, long story short, there's so much stuff packed into this journey. And maybe playing an instrument is part of it for some of
Yeah.
you guys out there. Maybe at this point it's not, you know. It just depends on where you're at in the journey. I just wanted to talk about it because I feel like for me, I can see that at this point, there's definitely some benefit to sitting down, learning an instrument, hearing the notes and how they are related to each other, learning a little bit of music theory, and then applying that to whatever you want. So I'm just speaking from where I'm at on the journey.
Cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm glad you
Yeah.
brought this topic up. I think it's interesting and it's helpful. I think I would, be it would be helpful for me, if I was just starting or maybe even just now. Like it's just nice to kind of hear some confirmation of like, you can come at it from any direction and. It's all valid.
Absolutely. 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 Yeah,
So,
man. So good
all right.
stuff, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for bantering, or not banter, but just going back and forth with me on this, because I know this was really my topic, and it's just something I've been thinking about lately for myself. Like, man, I kind of wish I would have started this a long time ago, but then again, like, my journey is my journey. At the time, I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I wanted to chop samples. I wanted to go that whole route. I obviously can't change that at this point, and I can't go back. So, but where I'm at now, I definitely think the a little bit of music knowledge, music theory, a little bit of learnings to play an instrument is hugely beneficial. And that's just my 2 cents on where I'm at this point. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to getting further on that journey myself. It's all good. I'm enjoying
yeah,
all of it. So yeah.
definitely, man.
So you just put out a song recently
Yeah.
on Bandcamp, and there is a link in the description. So everybody will check out this dope beat that Bryce just put out. It's really cool. Um, we don't have like a lot of. I think like you don't really have like a huge like social media presence, but at least people can check that out,
Oh
correct?
yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I don't, I'm still learning myself. So this whole journey of music and learning music is very much a process I'm in myself. So I don't claim to be some sort of wizard or virtuoso or anything like that. I just think it can be beneficial. So anyway, yeah, check out the
Yeah.
song if you're inclined to. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think what I get from your music is you enjoy doing what you do, and it comes through in the music, and I'm definitely a fan.
yeah, I
Um,
appreciate that.
and you guys, there's other links too. There's links for my stuff as well. I have a channel called Planet Plex where I do more like modular and other kind of videos and stuff. And there's some other things going on. I got some albums and stuff you can listen to if you want. So that's in the description. We really appreciate you guys hanging out with us, and hope that you're having a great day, great weekend, whatever it is for you. And hopefully this was helpful and interesting.
And we will be back soon. This is not the last episode you'll see from us for a long time. We'll be back. We'll be back pretty quick here.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have like a specific schedule,
Schedule,
but we
right?
we do have we just want to talk about some stuff. So
Absolutely,
hopefully you guys would
absolutely.
like to listen.
There you go. There you go.
All right. So thank you for watching, and I guess we'll get going here.
We'll see you guys next time.
Later.